I'll put a picture of the Titanic up, right, what's this one? Has anyone ever seen this before? And then I'll say, and this is a modern day cruise liner, and I'll put a picture of the Costa Concordia up. Do you think cruise liners today will sink like they did back in the day? And everyone shouts no, to which point I click the thing and the Concordia is on its side, and it brings it home to them that safety at sea is just as paramount today as what it was back in 1912.
Sounds like a fun gig, traumatising young children. Ahoy, ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the Deck Tales podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catlin, and this is where we dive headfirst into life at sea. From stunning destinations to unexpected storms, our guests have stories that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed a tear. Whether you're a seasoned sea dog or simply curious about life on board, Deck Tales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Mr. Richard Jones, a man who spends his days keeping naval tech running and his nights uncovering shipwrecks, air disasters and forgotten tragedies. He's published nearly 30 books, launched memorials across the UK, and believes history belongs to everyone. If it sank, exploded or vanished at sea, chances are he's researched it. So let's anchor up and dive right in. Hello, Richard.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Just had to go on packed carriages because the entire Circle Line and I think Piccadilly Line from this afternoon were in abeyance because, yeah, TfL love a good strike, especially on a Sunday. But we're here. We made it. We're in time just about. Whereabouts are you calling from? You're at sea, right?
No, I'm currently on a naval base up in Scotland. In Rosyth. So
for those who were looking for a quick and easy intro into what it is you do, naval base is the first clue.
Yeah, I am in fact in the Navy.
You're in the Navy in what sort of department?
Weapons engineering.
Oh, okay. Didn't really pop any questions in there about weapons engineering as far as I can remember.
No, I don't. To be honest, I keep my shipwreck and author side very, very distant from my Navy side for obvious reasons.
So then, in that sense, I will do my best to ask questions outside of the ones I've researched based on the website that you sent me to. In a nutshell, Richard, well, let's just go back a little bit how we connected. It was another Richard that connected us, wasn't it? Rich.
That's right, yeah. Rich Napolitano, yeah.
Napolitano, yes. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
he does a very good Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs podcast, and I've been on his show twice now. I often put his podcast on the speaker in the car and listen to some of the half an hour ones on the way home.
Okay.
So yeah, learn quite a few bits from his podcast, which is good.
It's a lovely, it's very well researched, I have to say. Far better research than obviously this guy. But I'm talking to people. He's looking through artifacts and historical documents. It's not always easy to research people because they don't all have websites, and 13 odd books that they've written that have been published. Is that how many you're up to now? Did I get that right?
In a week, I'm publishing my 27th.
27th, sorry, you've done 13 memorial campaigns.
19.
Well, then your website needs updating.
Yes, it does. It's there's quite a few sites that aren't updated yet. I've been very busy in the last 2 years. I think I've put up 6 new memorials in the last 2 years. So I'm constantly doing so. I've no memorial campaigns at the minute going on. I'm only actually writing one book, but I've got 27 published or about to be published, and I've got another 6 more in the pipeline ready to go. So I've been busy the last few years.
Jesus, 6 books that you've got like the bones of that you haven't even started writing.
No, as in they're written, they're literally in a folder, submitted, but because I've been really, really busy and I've had quite a bit of time on my hands, I've managed to get all my research together, write it, and then go on to the next one, and do one after the other in a short space of time.
Wow.
And they're just sat there now waiting to be published.
And what's the average?
I don't want to get them all out at the same time. sort of flood the market with
Yeah. What's the average like book length in terms of pages for your 28, 29?
Do you know what? It varies. I've got books that are a few hundred pages. I've got some that are only 60 pages. It just depends how much research needs to be done. If I've done a story that's a very, very obscure, not a lot of information type story, it will be a small book, but I'll make sure it's published. I'll make sure the information's out there. But in some of the other ones, it's 70,000, 80,000 words, and there's a lot of things going on. So it can vary. It really can.
And how do you categorize your types of your writing style?
Not sure really, because I do a few fictional ones as well. I do a lot of non-fiction. I do a lot of ones where I've got to sort of get the information correct so that it's a lot of it. Some of it's quoted, So it does vary. It really does. It's hard to pinpoint specific ways.
And of the 29 books that you've got written. So that's obviously I think it spans more than a decade, over two.
Almost 2 decades now. Yeah, I started getting the information together for my first book in 2003 and published it in 2009. So yeah, we're coming up to 16 years of solid writing and publishing now.
Get going. Well, so then you've got more than 2 books a year almost by that logic.
Yeah, almost.
The big and the small. Was there a first book that you read that inspired you to start writing in this particular niche?
No, not really. I've always had a fascination with shipwrecks. Shipwrecks went on to air disasters, and then it went on to big investigations into tragic events. And I was actually sat in the pub one day, and I was sat with my pint back in 2003, and I just thought, what am I going to do with all this information I've collected? I've collected it since I was a kid. What sets me apart from the weirdo that sticks stuff on his wall to the guy who keeps files for a purpose? What is my purpose? And I thought, I'm just going to pick subjects that have never been written about. I'm going to put memorials up where I can. I'm going to really research it, get as much information as possible, and be the subject matter expert on that particular subject.
So yeah, whatever's trending, or not trending rather, you take ships, for example, across the board. For most people, it's very much out of sight, out of mind. So they don't really think about ships in their day-to-day life. If they think of a shipwreck, they always go to the Titanic. But there's so many more stories out there. And we covered a bunch, me and Rich Napolitano, a few weeks back. But I'm sure we could cover a few more that you've covered. So between the two experts on shipwrecks and sea dogs, we can go through you as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, so when you start writing, when you dive into a disaster, is there anything in particular that you're hoping for, that you're looking out for, whether it's like historical details or, the unanswered questions? Yeah,
it's the story. I look and I think, what's already out there? And to say, for example, I did one on the Lockington rail disaster. That was my second ever project. There was a few news articles. There was, I think it appeared in maybe one book in a very short little area. And I thought, well, this is something that needs to be really researched. And in the space of just over a year, I managed to put a memorial up for it. I managed to increase the awareness of it, get a lot of articles in the newspaper, especially when it came to raising money for the plaque. And I ended up doing 51 interviews of people that were there on the day, the survivors, relatives, eyewitnesses, even the people who removed the wreckage afterwards, rescuers, and putting these appeals out. Whenever I do a modern day disaster, it's amazing just how many people come forward and they're content with telling the story to get it out there. And a lot of them come up with proof that they were there, so that makes it easy for me to basically say, yeah, this person was there, there's a photo. Or people keep news articles. You'd be surprised at how many people keep old news articles if they're involved in a certain disaster, and which is only natural. And
I think so.
Yeah, it's just gathering it all together, putting it all in folders until you think to yourself, right, what am I missing? And when I get to a point where there's very little left to research, I start putting pen to paper and splitting the chapters up, adding a bit there, and And in the end, I've got a book ready to go. So it's
Would you say you're part historian, part detective, or you leaning
yeah, kind of, because
one way or the other?
it does involve a lot of detective work. It really does. It's if I take the Moorgate disaster, for example, there were so many unanswered questions. There were so many things that I had to get around in order to sort of separate myth from reality. And like with like the Titanic, there's so many myths out there, and trying to find not only evidence that things did happen, but finding evidence that something didn't happen can be just as frustrating.
So you mentioned at the start air traffic disasters as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so that just made me remember. I don't know if you've ever heard of a comedian, he's a Canadian fella called Nathan Fielder.
No, I don't think so, no.
He had a show on Amazon called Nathan for You. It's brilliant. It's so good. It's on HBO, but you can find it on Apple. And he just goes around, he helps small businesses with crazy marketing ideas. And that's the sort of the beginnings of his show.
Okay.
I think it did 2 or 3 seasons, and it's like 20-minute episodes where he helps a bunch of people in each episode. But then after Nathan for You, he did another show called The Rehearsal. And the first series was all a mishmash of different stuff, but the budget just keeps on going and going and going. In the second season of The Rehearsal, he basically has this whole like mock-up airport, and the whole like mythos behind a lot of accidents in the sky is down to the poor communication and that to and fro between the captain and the co-pilot, because there's no time for them to establish a rapport. If anything goes kind of shit hit the fan, then there's not much they can do. So it's really good. I think you'd quite get a kick out of it.
No, I've never heard of that, to be honest.
The Rehearsal season 2.
Yeah.
I'd give that a go with Nathan Fielder. But, in the same way, like there's lots of pilots who can't get help if they're experiencing any mental health problems, because as soon as they try to ask for it, they could lose their wings and be grounded.
Exactly, yeah. There's been quite a few accidents where things like that have been blamed on the pilot, suffering a breakdown at the wheel kind of thing. So yeah, it's not uncommon.
You were saying about trying to separate myth from fact. Was there any tragedy that, of all that you've researched, still haunts you to this day? Something that really sticks in your mind?
I wouldn't say haunts me, to be honest, but it's there's a fair few that I'd like to do more on it, but there's too many people all trying to do the same thing. So it's that's why I do things that have not been covered. So nobody's stepping on my toes. I'm not stepping on anyone else's. And trying to get a story together at the same time as somebody else is maybe writing a magazine article about it, or societies and groups and things like that, they try to do the same kind of thing. And it's difficult because I don't want to stop people doing this, but at the same time, I'm researching, say, this subject, and these people have got all this new information that they're finding along the way, but they don't share it with me. So they keep it, and that's where it stays. It don't get published. It don't get written about. It's like, this is mine. And I've come across a lot of so-called historians that think history belongs to them, and they take this history and they keep it close to them, and that's where it ends. And the next thing, it goes into a skip when they pass away or whatever, and never seen again. So that history is lost forever. Yeah. Where I'm trying to get as much of it out there in the public domain, so people can enjoy it, people can use it, researchers and historians can go into it and quote from it, things like that. And that's what my job is, to try and get that out there. But there's so many people out there, and it's frustrating because I always say history belongs to everybody.
It sounds a bit like my mum. Whenever we have family gatherings, she's reluctant to give up on her digital camera, and she takes pictures on it, but no one ever sees them because she doesn't know how to upload them to the cloud or post them online. She's like, no, I'll just keep them on my little I keep pestering her to upload and do stuff. And only recently I've discovered or found that AI is amazing at color grading and restoring old grainy black and white or sepia toned pictures. Very, very, very good. But I digress. We've got a little tangent there, Rich. So your weapons engineering for the Navy. What sort of weapons are we engineering, Rich? Can you say?
Communications things, basically. That's my forte. But yeah, I can't really say much else.
I understand. Of course not. Of course not. This is you must have some rules in place for what you can and can't say. A man in your position.
It's easy for me to just not say anything, to be honest, because it's obviously going out in the public domain. It's the way it is.
That's why there was nothing about this on your website, because it's completely separate.
Like I say, I keep my day job away from my night job.
Yeah, as well one should. So the shipwreck stories that you've looked into, they're always usually systematic failures that are at the heart of engineering. That's what the problems are generally, would you say?
To be honest, there's a mixture. I mean, I personally have dived ships that have been sunk on purpose. There are ships that have been sunk by accident. There are ones that have been sunk in acts of nature, things like there's all kinds that are out there. I mean, some of them haven't even been sunk, and I've visited them. They've been sort of grounded and they've stayed there just because of the weather.
So then with some of these failures, these shipwrecks, you've got stories that could have been like there's something going on beneath the surface. We don't know why. It was part of a bigger conspiracy or a cover-up. There was some greed. These are all factors as well.
Yeah, there's all these factors come into. I mean, in some cases, pure stupidity. I mean, we all remember the Costa Concordia in 2012.
Yeah,
that was just a catalogue of. Wow, how did this happen in this day and age?
Was it just
the 100th anniversary year of the Titanic as well? So everyone's thinking about the Titanic when this massive cruise liner ends up on its side next to an Italian island. It was unbelievable how lessons are. And then we fast forward to 2023. And you've got the submersible Titan on the Titanic wreck in exactly the same position, a toxic culture. You've got an overconfidence in something that's not really should have any confidence in. It's people do not learn lessons. They never have done, they never will.
No, yeah, that was quite jarring, that documentary about the submersible. But going back, you said about you've launched a bunch of memorial campaigns. Why do you think some tragedies, Rich, are remembered more than others? Or like
press coverage. It's as simple as that. The death toll makes the press coverage. The press coverage makes the disaster. You look at one example, the rail crash at Ladbroke Grove, which everyone calls Paddington because that's the nearest major rail station, but it's actually quite a few miles from Paddington.
Yeah.
The Ladbroke Grove rail disaster in 1999. The next day, the headlines, 80 dead, 100 dead, 60 dead. It's the sensationalism. But in actual fact, there was 31 killed, which is bad enough. But the press love the sensation. They love look how bad it is. It's they love a good tragedy. They want the worst possible image to go on there because it sells papers, and that's what they're after. Now, we look at a tragedy that kills 4 people, or 9 people. Yes, it makes the headlines the next day because it's still a big incident. Then that's it. Then people forget about it. And that's what I found about the Lockington disaster, because there were 79 other rail crashes that were worse than Lockington in Britain, which I thought that was absolutely unbelievable. And so the Lockington crash, and because it happened on a Saturday, the Sunday papers, they're expensive. There's not as many of them. Nobody buys a Sunday paper because it's like 4 times the price normally. And the coverage is simply not as good. You're not going to get what's in the daily papers as what you have in the Sunday. And so by Monday, there was nothing in the papers, a tiny little article.
Have you heard about Arthur John Priest?
I was going to put a grave. That's another example. I was going to put a grave up for Arthur John Priest a few years back, and there were so many people doing different things about it, and people were withholding information. Someone else was then putting the grave out, and I thought, no, you deal with it yourself. And in the end, I mean, it's been put up now a few weeks ago, but unfortunately, he's got information wrong on it.
So just for those who don't know, if I'm sure I've said or mentioned this before. I even wrote it in the book that I haven't yet published, because as you say, it's information it's like the real life Uncle Albert of the maritime world. He is essentially a stoker, right? His moniker, his nickname was the Unsinkable Stoker, Arthur John Priest. And he was on a bunch of ships in his short but varied career. Pretty much all of them either sank, were torpedoed, or collided with other ships. And so for that reason, there were people that refused to sail with him, and he was branded of a bit of a Jonah. That's a fair assessment?
It was mined, torpedoed, gunfire, iceberg, and collision.
How did you remember that off the top of your head?
Like I say, I researched Arthur John Priest. It was on the Olympic when it collided with the Hawk, September 1911. It was on Titanic, 15th April 1912. It was on the Britannic in November 1916 when it was mined. And then it was on the Alcantara and the Donegal in the First World War, one sunk by gunfire, one sunk by a torpedo. And when he eventually died, it was because he had pneumonia in his bed in Southampton.
That's right, yeah.
Unfortunately, the gravestone says that he was in four more shipwrecks. And obviously the Olympic wasn't a shipwreck, it was just an accident. Yeah. But Wikipedia keeps on mentioning that he was on the Asturias when she sank in 1907. Asturias didn't sink in 1907. It was only just built because I'm actually writing a book on the Asturias. And unfortunately, famous historians are actually copying and pasting the same information, which is wrong. So, it's frustrating when you're putting all this effort into putting the correct information out there, and needless to say, somebody comes along and just copies and pastes the same old.
Well, with Arthur John Priest, I mean, are you going to? You could probably, with the information you've got, write his autobiography. You could write a film about his life.
I could do, but again, too many people all writing about the same sort of thing, so I just leave it. Other people can do it. The worst thing about it is 99.9% of the time, other people don't do it. So it just stays there up in the air until eventually it dies a death many years later. And I just shelved the project in the end because, like I said, there's information and people just aren't forthcoming with it.
So is there any other persons from history that you are focusing on outside of him you're working on now?
Not a person, no. I'm currently in the middle of writing a book cataloguing Britain's air disasters. You'd be surprised at just how many there are. I've got 54, I think, on my list. I had to stop after a while because there were so many ones during the war that I had to scrap most of the wartime ones because that was a book on its own. And it's mostly passenger aircraft, helicopters, airships, things like that. So yeah, I'm doing a lot on air disasters at the minute. I'm researching 2 shipwrecks, the Asturias and the Lulworth Hill, which I've done a podcast with Rich Napolitano about Lulworth Hill. And so yeah, at the minute I'm only doing those 3 projects, because I'm still waiting for the other 6 books to be released. So it's I'm still going to be busy for a while.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered a detail during your research that was like so shocking that you were unable to publish it?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's looking through inquest reports. You see photographs and information, and it really brings it home to you why people get traumatized.
What sort of things have you seen? Because you can talk about it. You're not showing us.
Basically how people's dead bodies are in a tragedy. Yeah. You think of a tragedy, you think of so many people killed, but you don't think that person suffered before they died, or you see what I mean? It's like
you think of it as an instantaneous death, but not really.
You do. You think instantaneous, and when you think of bodies being recovered, you think of them all nice and neatly in a line. You don't think for 1 minute that half of it's not there. There's pieces mixed in with other pieces, and actually seeing some of the photographs that I've had to look at in order for me to get the research done, it's horrendous. I had a whole new respect for the emergency services after seeing some of the inquest reports I've had to look through.
Yeah. Well, so you've not published obviously pictures and stories about people's deaths because it's better to just leave that to people's imagination, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's not fair, and also it's not fair on the relatives that this person now knows what really happened, because it'd be pointless me bringing that up. It wouldn't serve any purpose in telling the story. But what it would do is it'd ignite more trauma in the people who were involved. So that's why I'm genericizing it, if that's not such a word. Because if I linked it to a certain project that I've done or a certain disaster, then people will be like, oh, I wonder if it's my relative or what. But it's in a lot of cases it's stuff that I've never published about, and it's just things I've come across.
So your job is weapons engineer within the Navy, and your hobby is writing about ships of all sort of sizes and bits and pieces. A day in the life of a shipwreck researcher. Is it dusty archives, late nights, newspaper reels, diving into wreckage reports? That's the kind of vibe?
It goes a bit both ways, because I will choose a subject, and first thing I do is Google, because nowadays everything's on Google. Once you've got the basics, then you start taking what information's publicly available on the internet and looking, well, is this true? Is that true? Can I find any other sources from there? Then I start going into old newspaper reports, things like that, hitting the libraries, contacting people that I'm able to find online. Social media is an absolute game changer for research. I put an appeal out and people come to me and say, actually, I was involved in that. Actually, I've got this, I've got that. And a lot of my research now is done on people on social media that have things that they want to tell me. And I've had people today with exclusive photographs of an air disaster from years ago. And again, not wanting to sensationalize it. I'm like, right, I want something that's a bit sort of dumbed down. So I've got the wreckage to go in the book, but nothing that will traumatize anybody reading it, kind of thing. So I've got to get that balance. And then I go into, do I want to dive the actual wreck? Do I want to put a memorial up? Do I want to run an entire campaign? One such is the Yorkshire Belle and the Othello, two ships. One's a trawler, one's a pleasure boat, requisitioned by the Royal Navy in 1939. And one had been going around for years. The other one had only been launched the year before. 2 years later, they're in the middle of the River Humber, and a mine blows both of them up at the same time, kills everyone on board, so that all 21 people on the two boats are killed. And I'm running two memorial campaigns, one in Grimsby and one in Bridlington, so that both ships have got a plaque exactly identical, apart from the ship's name, on opposite ends where they were all based at the time, where the ships were based, because the crew were Royal Navy, so they were based all over the country. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, appealing out, looking through archives, getting all the information together. And that's one of the books that's coming out next year, the wreck of the Yorkshire Belle and Othello. I was going to dive the wrecks, unfortunately, because it's only a few metres down in the middle of the River Humber. I wouldn't see anything, and by the sounds of it, it's spread over a very, very wide area with the tides coming in and out. But it was a practical solution to the end of a project. So, but yeah, it can take everything from a bit of Googling to actually diving a wreck and running an entire campaign.
When you think of like the impact, obviously, that social media's had to help facilitate your research, as you said, it's been a game changer. Families, they come to you with their answers, their stories. Has there ever been a moment where your research has helped somebody like really bring them closure?
Yeah, massively. A lot of ones with the rail crashes that I've done have brought a lot of closure, finding out information. Again, it's going through these archives, finding official reports that they just weren't privy to at the time, and saying, well, actually, yes, your relative did do this, this, and this, or didn't do this. And bringing answers. I always try and find answers out for people, and bringing these answers and putting the memorial up is something that they're campaigned for years, but they just don't know what to do. Where I've become a bit of a veteran at it now, so I'm quite used to getting it done quickly and raising the money. And so, yeah, that's the one fuzzy feeling that comes with being able to complete a project of this magnitude.
Is that the fuzziest feeling that you get when you do that for people, or is there other feelings or things that you've done?
I think for me, it's the launching of the book coupled with the opening of a memorial, because that's when the two major milestones, people show gratitude, and it's that gratitude that leaves you thinking, well, do you know what, it's been worth it now, because they're happy, I'm happy, and yeah, project complete kind of thing.
Mm. Well, when you are going down the research rabbit hole, has there ever been a time when you got completely lost chasing down something, like a footnote or a rumor, and eventually you just had to you've hit the brick wall and you've had to give up on it?
Yeah, on my first ever project, the Great Gale, the lifeboat that they used on that day, I tracked it down to a river in Stamford Bridge where it was used as a houseboat. Pieces of it were brought back to the town years later, and I was ringing around people in a phone book saying, are you related to so and so who was who brought a piece of a lifeboat back to Bridlington back in 1900 or whatever it was. But yeah, trying to track people down many years later. In the end, you just have to say, well, I can't find them. It's as simple as that.
Mm. And when you're dealing with a lot of these dark stories, do you have to do something particularly animated to keep your sense of humour light? And I don't know.
I always take breaks, always. Yeah. Holidays, breaks, coffee breaks. Everything like that. It's
everything as a welcome distraction, I guess.
Yeah.
If you delve too greedily and too deep, as Gandalf said about the dwarves when they're mining, they can get awoken in the dark and get set afire. And that's what it is. It's kind of burnout on one side and just emotionally devastated, because you can take all this information and you meet some people. I live in London, so I meet a lot of crazy people when they've read or written and researched so hard that they've kind of lost it a bit up top.
Yeah, you can be sucked into a lot of these projects big time. And you, like whereabouts in London do you work?
Everywhere.
Finsbury Square?
Yeah.
So there's a memorial there to the Moorgate disaster.
Oh, yeah.
I put that up. That was mine.
Oh, okay.
And that was one of the projects I had to do where I was interviewing. I'd have like a weekend in London. I have to fit as many interviews as I can.
Yeah.
And it can get very heavy with the information. And so I've just got to break it up, right? I've got an interview at 11 o'clock. That's till 1 o'clock. Then I'll go for a meal, and then I'll go visit a tourist attraction or something and then I'll do another interview in the evening. Mm. But surprisingly, 90% of interviews and meetings that I do, they're quite light-hearted. And even though this person lost a relative like decades before, you can end up having a laugh with them about different things in life. They get through the whole how they got onto this part now, the traumatic part, and then they talk about the family, they talk about good things that have happened. And so it's not as traumatic as an interview could be. It's not like we're in a court of law and we're revealing all this horrible information. These people want to talk about their relatives in a good light. And sometimes it helps them not so much get over it, because that's a bit of a harsh term. It helps them come to terms with the fact that we're now an outsider, i.e. me, is talking about it. And and obviously I want to put the person in a good light, tell the story without any errors. And it's not as bad as what it could be. That's for sure.
It's like you said earlier. It's kind of convincing them to let go of these stories and share them with people, and not just sit on them, so that exactly. More people can be aware of it. Okay, change up the question a little bit. If you could have dinner with one shipwreck survivor from any era, do you know who it would be? Did you ever think about this one? I sent it to you a bit earlier.
It would be anybody that served on board the Bonhomme Richard back in 1779.
The Bonhomme Richard?
Yeah. The Battle of Flamborough Head, 23rd of September 1779. American warship versus British warship. The Bonhomme Richard sank, but the captain took over the British ship and sailed that away. People have been looking for the Bonhomme Richard ever since. And it's always been one of those elusive wrecks, just off where I live as well, on the Yorkshire coast. And it's fascinated me for over 30 years. I've seen famous people try and look for it. Clive Cussler tried looking for it. No one's ever found it.
Anyone on that ship who was on it, what would you ask them? Where are you?
Yeah, first of all, I'd want to know happened? What was it really like? Because obviously nearly 250 years has gone by, and a lot can be dramatized or they say history is won by the victors. Well, is it though? What did the people below decks have to say about it all? Because you only ever hear what the admirals are saying and what the captains are saying. What's the guy below decks, or the powder monkey, the 10-year-old boy that's been put down there to run around with the gunpowder? What's his take on it?
Yeah, I would like to interview those people, but sadly, they don't really exist anymore. The podcast format. It would be great to get some AI generated characters.
Either that or have a seance.
Yeah. Get Jim Hawkins on the pod, or Captain Blackbeard, or one of them. What's the weirdest or funniest story that you've come across whilst researching all these disasters and shipwrecks? Is there one or two that pop out?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a ship called, I think it was the Flare, and it broke into a bulk carrier, I think it was 1997, I think it was. And the guys evacuated, sailed away, and eventually they saw a ship coming towards them, and it was the bow section of their own ship that had floated all the way around and met them, and they thought it was another ship coming towards them. It's their own ship, just only the bow section. So that must have been disheartening.
How did that work? They looked like a transformer or something. They just didn't know the ship.
I think the ship broke in two. The two halves floated away. They evacuated from the back end, and then they saw the front end. And so that was.
Please save us! Oh wait, that's us.
Yeah. There was the one where the ship called the Dole America, November 1999, set sail from Portsmouth. The pilot had literally just left the ship, and they rammed it into a lighthouse in the middle of the night.
The one place that's trying to help.
And if that wasn't funny enough, although it was good damage control, stopped the ship from sinking, but the ship was classed as a banana boat, so the headlines the next day were, you couldn't make it up.
What's a banana boat? I just think of those
literally a ship that carries bananas from the Caribbean, and then it arrives in Britain.
I'm thinking of the thing that the tourists get on that's being pulled by a speedboat.
It was a massive ship as well. Have a look at the Dole America. It's huge. It's still going now. It got repaired.
DOLE? Dole?
Yeah. Dole is a company that literally, like Fifes, that deal with bananas and import and exporting, shipping, etc.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't imagine they'd be bringing money for people collecting their Dole money. It wouldn't be much good to people. Do you have a favourite bad captain story? One where human error was so ridiculous it's almost like satire.
I think, again, Costa Concordia, the way he managed to wreck a cruise liner with 5,000 people on, it's just... I just read it when it was happening, and I'm just like, what? Coupled with that, again, I'd say the Titan. Everything that comes out about that story is just... words cannot express just how bad those two sea disasters are. For those people shouldn't have been left in charge of anybody.
No, and the timely nature of it as well may have played a part. Who knows? So you've written non-fiction and fiction novels. How do you decide when a story is best told as history versus when a story is best told as fiction?
So my fictional novels were because there were three subjects that I was passionate about, but there's loads written about them, but I couldn't bring anything new to the table. And whenever a subject like that, when there's new information, it's such a minuscule bit of information, people drag out an entire book, but just put either their own theories in there or what's already been put in there. And so I thought, right, I'm fascinated by Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, fascinated by the life of Jane Austen as an author, and the wreck of the Bonhomme Richard. And again, I've got nothing new to add. So I thought, right, I'm going to make up a novel, and it's going to be a bit like National Treasure, because I love that film. I think it's brilliant.
What's that one? Is that with Nicolas Cage?
That's the one, yeah. And he's looking for the gold that's hidden somewhere in America. Yeah, and there's these characters that I've created in this book, and they're looking for this lost gold that Anne Boleyn had back in the day. And they're finding all these clues along the way. And it's fun. You can make it up as you go along. And after the first one, I thought, well, I really enjoyed doing that. I'll do one on a lost secret novel that Jane Austen finished, but then it got hidden. And the third one was the search for the wreck of the Bonhomme Richard, because because it contained a gunpowder that was so explosive there was only a little bit ever made, and they have to get to the wreck before terrorists manage to get to it and raise this special gunpowder.
Is that completely fictional?
Yeah, completely fictional. Yeah,
right.
Totally the Bonhomme Richard, which is featured in my third novel, Gunpowder Wreck.
Right.
It was America's first real naval warship. Have you ever heard of John Paul Jones?
John Paul Jones. I mean, that sounds like a very memorable name, but I just haven't got a face I can put to it.
No, he's known as the father of the US Navy. And during the War of Independence, the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, but they didn't actually get independence till 1783. So in that 7-year period, there was a lot of fighting between the British and the Americans. John Paul Jones, who was actually a Scot, he went all the way over to America after 2 people died under his command. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going back there again because they're just going to send me to prison. And they gave him a ship and he became a good captain and he became really good at what he did. And so he started going around the British coast. He sacked the town of Whitehaven. That didn't go according to plan. He ended up apologising about them. And I think his crew ended up getting drunk ashore rather than causing the havoc that he wanted. And I think he just looted some silverware from the local dignitaries instead. So it was a bit, this isn't what we were meant to do. And then the year after, he took the Bonhomme Richard, which was an old East Indiaman, French. He had a few French ships with him, so there were 4 ships in the fleet, went all the way down the Yorkshire coast, and he came across HMS Serapis and another escort ship, the Countess of Scarborough, and they says, right, convoy escape, we will fight the Americans. The convoy escaped, the Americans and the British fought together off Flamborough Head, 23rd of September 1779, and in the end, the Serapis and the Bonhomme Richard were linked together, and they were sort of spinning around in the middle of the sea. I think their anchors must have snagged each other, but they were bow to stern like that, and they just blasted each other until in the end, the Serapis was boarded by the Americans, as was the Countess of Scarborough, but the Bonhomme Richard went down and sank, and no one's seen her since. John Paul Jones went on to do bigger things, later becoming father of the Russian Navy. He did a lot of stuff, and then eventually he died in his late 40s, alone in a flat in Paris, and his body was buried in a Paris cemetery, and it wasn't until I think it was 1905 that the President of the United States finally said, bring him home, and they found him in 1905 after a couple of years searching, and he's now at the US Naval Academy in Maryland in Annapolis.
I imagine he's got a better tombstone now.
Yeah.
Were you reading any of that off of a Wikipedia? Because that was all
use notes. I do a lot of talks, and I've only ever used notes once, and that's because I tailored a talk for the particular group.
Well, yeah, repetition of these stories must always make it so much easier.
I can reel off things like that, just like that. And I learned the Titanic's Latin long by the age of about 15.
Well, when you're doing these talks, you're doing them to kids in schools. How do they react to some of these disasters that you tell them about? I
don't want them to be bored because they are only youngsters, and so I put on I'll put a picture of the Titanic up. Right, what's this one? Has anyone ever seen this before? And then I'll fast forward a few big shipwrecks with treasures in it, things like that. And then I'll say, and this is a modern day cruise liner, and I'll put a picture of the Costa Concordia up. Do you think cruise liners today will sink like they did back in the day? And everyone shouts no, to which point I click the thing and the Concordia is on its side, and it brings it home to them that safety at sea is just as paramount today as what it was back in 1912. And then obviously the faces are like, oh my God, this happened recently. Yeah. And yeah, it
sounds like a fun gig, traumatizing young children.
But it's I try and put the information out there. I did one talk about the Navy for some kids, and I forgot that they were all like 8 years old. And I'm saying, we all remember the Iraq and Afghanistan.
We all
and even
do.
the teachers are like, nope, don't remember that. That's 12 years ago. I was 8 then, and I'm like, oh yeah, fair one.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe all these years of research, it just makes the time go like, oh wow, where did that time go? I used to have hair. I used to be one color. Now I've got loads of grays. Okay, if you had to pitch one of your books to Netflix to make it into a binge watch show, is there one that would be top of the list?
ooh, that's a hard one, to be honest, because
I know, because you can't. It's like choosing your favorite kid.
I would pitch the one that's not been published yet, which is the story of the Lulworth Hill and the survivors in the raft.
The raft of the Lulworth Hill raft.
Yeah.
What's the Lulworth Hill in a nutshell?
The Lulworth Hill was a cargo ship, and it was torpedoed and sunk by an Italian submarine. And there were 15 survivors. One got taken prisoner of war. He got taken away by the submarine. The submarine transferred him over to another submarine, which took him to a prisoner of war camp. But the submarine that he was originally on was sunk a few days later. So if he hadn't have been transferred over, everyone had just assumed he died on the Lulworth Hill. There were 37 killed on the Lulworth Hill in the end. Of the 14 survivors that were on the raft, only 2 survived because they lasted 50 days at sea.
How many?
50. 7 and a bit weeks.
Oh,
It was
my
an
God.
absolutely terrifying story.
Yeah.
That's now been turned into a play. So the relatives of one of the survivors is an author herself, and she made a play. Went to see it, I think it was late last year, and it was really, really good. And the other survivor, he actually wrote a book himself about the time on the raft, and he actually wrote everything down that happened on that raft when each of the survivors died and what date and time they died, so the relatives could at least know what really happened.
Yeah.
And he wrote it down on a piece of sailcloth, which was now in the last time I saw it was in the Imperial War Museum. But 50 days on a raft, a prisoner of war, and a lost ship. You just can't make this up.
What year was that? Did you say?
That was 1943. I put a plaque up for both the survivors in their hometowns for the 80th anniversary of the rescue by HMS Rapid.
Have you seen the film Against the Sun?
Against the Sun? No, I haven't seen that.
Add it to your watch list. I'll read it. I'll read the synopsis to you. Tell me if you don't think this doesn't sound like basically what you just explained. After their plane crashes during World War One, 3 Navy airmen from the US find themselves on a raft in the middle of the ocean fighting for survival.
Is it not a true story, is it?
Probably, maybe. Yeah, I think it is actually, because there was like Polaroids at the end of the film. It's got the kid in it from Harry Potter who plays Draco Malfoy.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he's one of the actors, but it's literally just 3 people. What was funny was at the end of the film, spoiler alert, they find land, and then it kind of like there's the credits or whatever. And I looked up the name of the island on Google Maps, and I found it. And the only one registered business was like a little restaurant. I clicked on it, and so many reviews about like just what I needed after being stranded on a life raft after 3 weeks. I can't remember how long they were in that film at sea. It might have been a similar amount of time. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it sounds like the sort of thing I'd see. Things like that I buy on DVD, so I have it in my archive.
Yeah. It's what year did it come out? 2014.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised I hadn't heard about that one.
That's when that one came out. Yeah, I gobble this stuff up. I love films, TV shows. Yeah, I haven't watched Succession because there's too many things to watch, and there's supposedly like a cruise ship side story in there. But okay, we've got some cheeky sort of rapid fire fun questions to kind of go out on. Titanic or Lusitania, which story fascinates you more?
Titanic started me off, so I'd probably say that, but they're just as fascinating as each other, to be honest. I think there's a bit more actual controversy with Lusitania, though. Titanic's, there's too many conspiracies, and they're all false.
It's very muddled. Too many cooks spoiling the broth on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are the controversies or the conspiracies around the Lusitania?
Lusitania. It's just a whole thing of was there ammunition on board? We know there was ammunition, but was there bombs? To be honest, there's no real evidence of it. But
yeah, well, who knows? This was one of the things that was First World War, and we or they blew us up?
The U-boat hit the torpedo, the Lusitania. There was one explosion from the torpedo, and then a second explosion, and the ship went down in just 18 minutes. Which
But
Titanic
who was on the ship? The passengers were German.
No, passengers were British and American and European.
Right. Okay, so they thought we were carrying munitions. That's why they targeted it.
Kind of, yeah. They knew it was either Lusitania or Mauritania, but
Right.
it was a case of the area around the British Isles is a war zone, so anybody in that area is going to be targeted. And it really did go down well with the Americans. So they sort of put a hold on the war zone for 2 years, and it's only when they brought the war zone back in 1917 that the Americans declared war, because at that point it was just on hold.
Yeah, it didn't do much good for the cruise ship industry as well.
Well, no, exactly.
I mean, it's going to put a dent in your returning customers, I think, the statistics of who would want to go on a cruise. Yeah, not during this time, thanks very much. I'll wait till it's all over. If you weren't writing about disasters, what would you be doing instead?
Right, about treasure, probably. There's enough archaeological sites that are interesting.
Yeah. So
ancient Egypt's always fascinated me, so I'd probably go into ancient Egypt.
Okay. So ancient Egypt, yeah, fascinating subject. But let me ask you this. If you yourself, Richard, had your own vessel, whether it be, a small little catamaran, single engine, something or other, or a yacht, what would you call your vessel?
Not sure, to be honest. It's I'd probably name it after somebody famous, maybe a hero, or I don't know. It's one of them things that I'd have to give it a lot of thought.
Yeah. So you got plans to have your own boat?
Nah.
No. But have you got a maritime history hero? Somebody that you kind of...
Oh yeah, Dr. Robert Ballard. He's my all-time hero. I named my son after him. He's the one guy that I followed everything he did, and his ethics are great. He goes in the look but don't touch kind of thing, so he doesn't salvage anything apart from the Roman wrecks, which obviously there's things in there going to to be studied, but don't bring anything up from the Titanic or the Bismarck or anything. And I think his search ethics are good. He's found about 90% of the things he's gone looking for. The only thing he hasn't found is things like Amelia Earhart. Went looking for her a few years back. And I just find him a fascinating guy, and he's the guy that I wanted to be when I was a kid. Still is.
So your son is Dr. Robert Ballard, or you just called him Robert?
Just called him Robert.
Or maybe you could call the non-existent ship of your dreams the Ballard.
Yeah, could do. Yeah, be a good one.
The Ballard. If you were stranded on a desert island with only one of your books, of the 29 books you've got, which one would you pick? And would you actually reread it, or would you use it for kindling?
If I was stranded on a desert island, I won't be reading my own stuff. I'm sick of reading it. I've proofread it about 15 times.
Yeah, it's not like desert island.
Use it as a bribing tool for any passing fishermen. I've got reading material.
Yeah, please, look, I'm a published author. Save me.
Well, that's me. That's honest. Forget the beard.
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, it was hypothetical. If you had to have one that's kind of like, I'm not getting rid of this, like all your books are, on the ship and you've got to go ashore and survive, but you want to take one keepsake.
I'll probably take the first one, just because it was the first one I did.
And that was the one that got the whole ball rolling. What was that one about?
The Great Gale of 1871.
That was it. The Great Gale of 1871. Or what about the Great Gale or Hurricane of 1987?
When the Hengist ran aground.
Well, that's when I was born. Right. Yeah. Well, so I would have been a brand new babe, literally, like a couple weeks old, if that. And my nan's caravan flipped over in Bognor Regis, or the hurricane pulled the roof off, something like that.
God.
Yeah, long time back, but it was what made Michael Fish's career.
It did, yeah, made him famous.
Isn't it funny how these days, anyone who basically fucks up and is like, made to be seen to somebody, they famously messed up. And yet now we kind of give that person more airtime because it's sort of a bit of a memeable moment. Like, look what happened to Chris Kamara, you know. The red card. Really? I thought he was bringing on a sub, the football pundit.
Yeah, I don't watch football, so I know his face, but I don't know who he is.
Yeah. It's just funny how basically
nowadays everything's turned into a meme, isn't it? So it's
we celebrate people who do cock-ups live or things of that nature. But
even now, you only have to look at the government that Angela Rayner's gone. So the memes are out already. So she's only going to be remembered for being a tax dodger. The memes are already out, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, this won't go out for a few months, but that's all been up in the newspapers this week. Today, in fact, down here in London, there was security alarms, government security alarms, and so it was a bit random because you just heard the sirens going all of a sudden, all down the street, all throughout the house, and you're like, what? And I checked my phone, and there was messages.
Did you not know what was happening?
I didn't know. Where
it was on the news about a week ago that watch out for this happening on Sunday. And I'd forgotten about it, and I nearly jumped out of my skin when my phone just started going off.
Yeah.
You can't read it unless you keep the alarm on, because as soon as you're okay, the alert goes.
Yeah, no, it was all down the street. I was in, where was I? I was in High Street, Kensington.
Well, that was weird to see when they're all going off at once.
Yeah. I've not heard that in years.
It's like that scene from Sherlock right at the very beginning when he sends a text to everyone saying wrong and everyone's phone goes off all at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a bit unnerving. Like, what was the practice for this time? Why did they all of a sudden decide? Well, you said that they told us a week in advance on the news, but you'd forgotten.
I had, yeah.
I don't tend to really watch the news. Okay. Going back to your rapid fire, somewhat fun closers. Which historical captain would be the absolute worst person to be stuck in a pub with, besides Captain Shateno? Because we've already brought him up a couple of times.
Probably Admiral Sir Cloudlessly Shovel. He very famously led a fleet off the Scilly Isles in, I think it was 1707 or 1703.
What was his name?
Admiral Sir Cloudlessly Shovel.
Cloudlessly
Shovel. And from what I can gather, this is the story I've got in my head. Do correct me if I'm wrong on this one later. But I've always had it in my head that he wanted to know where he was. And someone says, we are currently off Cornwall or wherever they said they were. And one of the ABs went up to him and he said, Admiral, sir, we're actually off the Scilly Isles. I know because I live around here and I recognise these cliffs. And they dismissed him. And the young lad was correct, and the entire fleet was wrecked, killing 2,000 people.
Damn. Well, so then he would be someone to avoid in a pub because of his gross negligence. Not
only that, if people aren't willing to listen to the subject matter experts, then they're no good as a captain. A good captain will listen.
Yeah. Unlike the man, what's his name? The guy who led the submersible thing. He just fired everyone who didn't agree with him. Yeah. And didn't understand basic engineering for these vessels. No,
exactly. I was actually researching the Titan while I was writing a book about the Titanic dives, which the book's out. Well, it's supposed to be out on the 30th of August, but so it's out any day. There's just been a slight delay. And while I was researching it, then it came up that the sub was missing. And I'm like, and as more information came out, I thought, none of this was public. I was literally looking for information on the Titan, and none of this negative stuff was public.
1 second. The Titan ship that preceded the Titanic. I'm just trying to remember. I read this. This is The Wreck of the Titan or Futility.
Oh, by Morgan Robertson, published 1898.
Yes. So have you read that one?
No, but I've also read recently that it was republished after the Titanic sinking.
Yeah, but it originally came out before the Titanic sank, and it talks about a ship called the Titan that sinks in Atlantic waters, and there's not enough lifeboats.
Now, I've always thought that this was some sort of a coincidence. From what I can gather now, it was rewritten with all these new facts, including the name of the ship, after the Titanic sank, because there were only about 200 or 300 published before the ship sank. Once Titanic sank, look, I published this 14 years ago, but he's altered a lot of the facts so it looks like he's predicted it.
You reckon that's what he did, or you think that's what he did?
That's what I've now been led to believe. I'm not 100% sure of the ins and outs of it, because it's always been one of those strange coincidences, like all the JFK and Abraham Lincoln coincidences. But now someone said that, you start thinking, I get you. If he only actually sold a few hundred copies, no one will have a first edition. So republishing it, but altering those things, it's still the same book. It's just altered the name of the ship and altered a couple of little facts. So now it looks like it, and then it sells more. And
when they republished it, was that the first edition?
That was probably the second edition, but
they called it,
yeah. So it's interesting. I've not researched it enough, but yeah, that's what I was, because all these different conspiracies about the Titanic, they can be shot down in minutes. But people are fixated on them, and these things just keep getting repeated and repeated. And unfortunately, there's too many people out there that are willing to give it airtime.
Well, as it sounds sensational, then it's probably good for content and the like. What's the most ridiculous myth or tall tale about shipwrecks you've ever come across?
That has got to be the Titanic switch. It's so ridiculous that I don't understand why people even believe that. And people do believe it. And people who believe it obviously have never been on a ship.
What is the Titanic switch?
Saying it's the Olympic.
Oh, okay.
Have you not heard that?
The Olympic was the one after the Titanic, or the one before?
Before.
So there was a problem with
it was launched and was actually on its maiden voyage in 1911. Titanic was still being fitted out. Olympic was in collision with a British warship called the Hawk in September 1911.
Yeah, I've read about that.
So the two ships were almost side by side in the docks, and some guy wrote a book basically saying that they've switched the ships over. Now, it just goes to show how little people knew about actual ships, because you can't just switch a name over. You can spot a mile off if something's different with another ship, not least because it was there for a few weeks. There were thousands and thousands of shipyard workers that would all have to keep quiet about it. And there's an entire deck on the Titanic that is enclosed and the Olympics is open. So to weld all that on would have took a long, long time. And one of the things in the book said that the name on the Titanic is not there anymore on the wreck, but what is there is an M and a P. You can read the word Titanic. So
he's full of shit.
It's just completely made up. And how people can believe it, I've absolutely no idea.
And what does anyone stand to gain, even if it was a switch? There's no point.
It sells books. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I did a university degree, and one of the co-authors of this book was Dan van der Vat, who did a very good book on warships. But part of my degree was giving evidence to the sources. And I says, well, this is a very good book and it gives evidence of this. And I quoted, however, the author cannot be taken seriously due to the fact that his previous book on the Olympic switch is one of the most ridiculous conspiracy theories. Therefore, as an author, you cannot have him credible. And I had to put that in my dissertation, because that throws into question then. It's like when somebody completely lies to your face, you throw into question everything they've ever said then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, you never want to be in the position where if somebody says, actually, I made a mistake, that new evidence has come to light or whatever, but to have something on that magnitude and just put clear garbage together. I mean, it made an interesting read. I read it years ago, but looking at the evidence, it's just completely made up to sell books. And it's a shame, because there's a lot of aspects of the Titanic that are worth writing about. I've written 4 books about the Titanic now, each of them from a different angle.
Oh wow! Okay, but so I think you may have just answered my last question. If you were the captain on a ship full of historians, which one would you make walk the plank?
Oh, definitely that guy.
That guy. Yeah.
However, there's a couple of historians that I know that they're the ones that I mentioned earlier. This is my history. No one's getting hold of it. So there's quite a few. To be honest, the plank it'd be just a constant stream of people going up.
It is difficult though. Like I met someone last year, and he told me that his dad was like an admiral or something, a very high ranking. I can't remember what exactly. But I said, well, would you like to share some of his stories on the podcast? And he was like, oh, no, I'm writing it up as a book. And, when it's done, it's done. It's like, okay, it's just becoming difficult to, well, not to say that people don't read books anymore, but less people read books, a lot less than they ever did. And now people are coming over to podcasts a bit more in their dribs and drabs. So everyone who's got stories, who feels like they could share them, it's a lot more of an easier format. It's a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I try and use all formats, books, podcasts, blogs. You got to go into the 21st century, because otherwise the stories aren't going to get out there if you just stick to one format.
Exactly. Richard, before we say goodbye, would you like to promote your wares, your website, anything that you can use to help people find you easier?
Well, I found that of all the social media and things like that I'm on, Facebook is the one place where people get hold of me, and it's where a lot of my things are shared. So if you want any updates on some of my work, or I even offer to help people out for free if people want some information or want help with their own research, find me Richard M. Jones on Facebook, which is facebook.com/shipwreck.data, and give me a shout by all means. I'll help where I can. And if anyone's got any questions, by all means, give me a shout.
Thank you very much. And all other links to all your other socials, I mean, your Facebook is your main one, but I mean, they're all linked on your Facebook, I'm assuming.
They are, yeah. I've got a graphic on there saying follow me on, and all the list of all the social medias. I mean, it's unless you're talking about Donald Trump, nothing's liked or shared. So
Well,
things like that. It's just
he's trending at the moment, as politicians always are, because they are the top dogs, aren't they? Whereas we're talking about history that's been and gone, and people were like, well, where's the relevance?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the way that rolls.
But it's a subject we both enjoy talking about, and if there's anyone else out there that likes to listen to these stories, then hey, they're in the right place. Someone was talking to me about who is your listener, your avatar. I was like, it's so hard, because every guest is a different type of ship or different position within the type of ship.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is difficult to narrow down and fine tune the niche, but it's within a niche, right? Any deck, that's the niche. Anyone who loves wood furnished decks would be my ideal listener.
Excellent. Sounds good. Been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure, my friend. Nice
one. Catch you in a bit then.
Thanks very much, mate. I'm
no worries.
Much appreciative.
Brilliant.
Have a wonderful evening, Richard. And
you too, mate.
It's been lovely talking to you. And
brilliant, yeah.
See you again sometime soon.
Definitely. Catch you in a bit. See you.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of Deck Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. There are lots of other shows out there to compete with, so if you are enjoying Deck Tales, why not help us out by going over to Spotify or Apple and dropping us a 5-star rating. This will boost the show's visibility and help to attract new listeners every week. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials, because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your Captain Sammy Catlin. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on Deck Tales. Bon voyage!